Have you ever asked for directions and found after you were several blocks on the way that you couldn't remember whether you were told to turn right or left? Have you ever told one of your subordinates, "Sure, go ahead, that'll be okay," only to realize later that you had approved a substitution that ruined a whole production batch? Did you ever mumble, "All right, just go on and do it and let me see the ball game in peace," and then realize you had given the children permission to clip the poodle with your electric razor? Good listening is important. Whether you're listening to an explanation of a new company policy, a grievance expressed by one of your subordinates, a request from your child, instructions for operating a new machine, or directions to the nearest telephone, good listening produces satisfaction and success. The levels of communication. Listening is important to your success and happiness on at least 4 different levels of communication. 1. Casual, social interchange. The first level is the casual, social interchange between strangers or casual acquaintances. Listening in these situations requires little concentration or involvement because the subject matter is usually simple and involves content of relatively little importance. Minimal effort in listening is required to accomplish the purpose of the exchange, which is usually to indicate basic friendliness and openness to further communication should a need arise. Of course, you want to listen carefully enough to give reasonable responses. It isn't a good idea to say, "Hello, how are you?" and program yourself to respond routinely by saying, "That's good," to every answer you receive. Although the expected response is, "I'm fine," you might occasionally say, "That's good," to someone who has said, "I feel terrible. My ulcer's acting up today." 2. The personal social level. Listening on the casual social level is actually preparation for a deeper second level, which might be called the personal social level. When communication on the first level proves to be satisfactory, 2 people often find that they have mutual interests. This discovery may lead to further relationships that require more careful listening. The personal social level of communication involves exchanges that are of greater importance than casual comments about the weather. Ideas and information may be exchanged, but the principal purpose of this type of communicating and listening is simply to enjoy the relationship and to give and receive a feeling of personal acceptance and worth. Listening on this level requires sensitivity to another's feelings and a shared desire to give and receive acceptance. 3. The information and idea level. A third important listening level is the information and idea level. Listening for ideas may or may not involve a personal relationship of any importance. Listening for ideas may take place in a large lecture room or in a small meeting. It may occur in a conversation between 2 people who are concerned with a mutual project, or in a gathering where people have met for the purpose of hearing someone present ideas or information. Listening for information or ideas primarily involves intellectual processes, but emotional factors cannot be overlooked because they could distort or block perception. 4. The level of intimacy and disclosure. The most rewarding level of listening and communication could be called intimacy and disclosure. On this level, 2 people share their innermost thoughts and reveal who they are, what they want, and how they feel. Communication at the level of intimacy and disclosure involves real caring for one another, sharing a common interest in achieving some important goal, and being willing to disclose one's most private self and to accept such disclosure from another in a supportive, loving manner. Successful communication on the level of intimacy and disclosure is not easily achieved. It requires a strong base of mutual confidence and a belief that such sharing is safe. Listening on this level requires a large measure of empathy, the ability to understand and accept another without judgmental attitudes. Giving and accepting at this level, without fear and without censure, require a secure self-image. Listening at the level of intimacy and disclosure occurs in many different situations. It is the basis of a satisfying marriage or sexual relationship. It is the foundation of all the complex family relationships. It occurs between friends. It happens in business when people are committed to achievement of vital organizational goals that affect the well-being of the whole group. It even occasionally takes place between complete strangers in a chance encounter. Listening on each of the 4 levels of communication requires both intellectual and emotional involvement, although the mixture may be different. The amount of effort and the attitudes brought to a particular listening activity depend on the level, the purpose, and the expected benefits. Listening may be random, friendly, sympathetic, intense, casual, or even furtive. It may be based on the desire to receive information or instructions, to understand someone else's thinking, opinions, or feelings, to receive feedback on one's own effectiveness, to get information that will help in making a decision, or merely to be entertained. No matter what the purpose of listening, greater benefit accrues from knowing how to listen creatively. Attitudes for listening. If you are to enjoy the highest possible benefits from listening, success cannot be left to chance. Like any important undertaking, creative listening requires adequate preparation, careful execution, and continual monitoring. Probably the most crucial area of preparation for creative listening involves attitudes. If you demonstrate a willingness to listen, show interest in what people have to say, and actually feel a genuine interest in them and their ideas, you not only gain the respect and admiration of others, but you also become aware of repeated opportunities to gain important information, to learn about others, and to influence the course of events around you. The basic ingredient for developing effective listening attitudes is readiness to learn. Closely allied to readiness to learn is willingness to learn from a particular source. Creative listening is impossible for those who believe they already know everything, or that others know nothing of any importance. Readiness to learn, then, involves both your self-image and your attitude toward the worth of others. A strong, secure self-image makes it easy for you to admit to yourself, as well as to someone else, that it is possible for you to learn from others. It then becomes important to listen attentively and receptively to the ideas and opinions of others. This does not mean that you will accept as unalterable truth every statement you hear. You will not act upon every suggestion you receive. You will not automatically alter your opinions to match those you hear expressed, but you will listen and evaluate, compare and synthesize all that you hear. You will believe what you prove to be true. You will accept what appears to be both feasible and beneficial, and you will incorporate parts and bits of what you hear into your own thinking and acting. Throughout all this complicated process, you will retain a sense of your own worth. You will maintain your own values and standards, and you will continue to be your own person, unique in your identity and secure in your self-image. The other side of the willingness to learn is a belief in the value of others as individuals, and in the possibility that they have ideas and information of worth. S.I. Hayakawa said, "Most of us, most of the time, are chiefly concerned with getting our views across, and we tend to find other people's speeches a tedious interruption of the flow of our own ideas." You communicate your willingness to listen to others through a set of attitudes that collectively make up what is usually called empathy. Empathy includes the ability to continue to believe in the worth of a person who at this moment seems to be exhibiting attitudes or actions of which you disapprove, and to communicate this belief without condoning the unacceptable attitude or action. Empathy is the ability to understand what another is feeling, to acknowledge his right to experience that emotion even though you may consider it inappropriate, and to communicate these attitudes. Empathy also arises from a shared emotion, idea, or belief that involves communication of both acceptance and agreement. Empathy exists in an atmosphere of openness and trust. It evaporates in the presence of threat or suspicion. Empathy is the quality which lets you listen calmly to your teenaged son complain that all his friends make fun of him because he isn't allowed to drive the car alone, and then reply, "I know how unpleasant it is to be the brunt of teasing, and it's too late for us to do anything about the fact that most of your friends are several months older than you and already are legal driving age. I'll bet you can figure out some snappy comebacks that will keep the teasing from hurting so badly between now and your birthday. Come on, I'll help you think of some ways to handle it." Empathy enables a sales manager to listen with understanding and acceptance to a new member of the sales staff who is obviously suffering from call reluctance, and to refrain from either scolding or empty reassurance. Empathy allows the sales manager to say instead, "Tell me what calls you have scheduled for tomorrow. What do you expect to happen when you keep the appointment? How have you planned to handle it? What else could you do to make the call a success? Empathy makes it possible for a young husband to listen as his wife complains that she feels isolated and tied down with small children. Instead of attempting to make her feel guilty for wanting to neglect her duties as a mother, he is able to say, "I'll help you get the children to bed, and then we'll sit down together and brainstorm some ways to make your life more exciting and more rewarding. We'll look at what I can do to help, how we can get more time together for the two of us, and what other adjustments can be made for you to make the changes you need." Empathy is the quality that enables a salesperson to listen to stalls and objections from prospects and hear needs and buying motives which demonstrate a desire to buy the product. Empathy provides the key to a successful close. One of the most effective tools for demonstrating empathy is to concentrate completely as you listen. Continuing to sign letters, watch TV, or operate a machine says that what the other person is saying deserves only part of your attention. While you may actually have plenty of mental capacity available to carry on a routine chore and a conversation at the same time, attempting to do so telegraphs the message that you aren't really interested in listening, since you can't put aside what you're doing even for a few minutes. Although you can hear all that is said, you may have closed an emotional door and caused something vital to remain unsaid. Not only that, but your lack of concentration may also cause you to miss crucial signals such as tone of voice, facial expression, or other body language that could tell you as much or more than the actual words your ears pick up. Whenever you decide that it is important to listen to someone, stop everything else you're doing and focus your full attention on listening. Concentrating on listening often involves a sense of timing and the ability to weigh circumstances according to your own firmly established sense of values and priorities. It is easy to hold your 5-year-old in your lap and make her feel secure in your love and affection and still keep up with a football game on TV. But if your 16-year-old who is supposed to be at a school party comes home escorted by a police detective, the situation obviously deserves more of your concentrated attention. Your priorities place your family in a more important position than any football game. You would turn off the TV immediately so that your full attention can be given to the needs of your child. Suppose one of your peers stops at the office door and asks, "Is it okay if my secretary makes about 20 copies on your copying machine? Ours is being repaired, and I need this report for a meeting at 10:30. You can afford to keep right on with whatever you're doing and say, "Sure, go ahead." It is a minor matter. But it is entirely different when your sales manager comes in and says, "I think we need to discuss the effect this new pricing structure for our product will have on the salespeople. I'm afraid it will mean a cut in income for some of them." You know that the success of the company depends in a large measure on its sales. Anything that directly affects the income of salespeople and therefore influences their morale could be an important factor in the company's success. You will either stop everything else and discuss the matter, or you will make an appointment to meet at a time when you can concentrate on the problem. All of the attitudes important to the listening activity might be summarized in one word: sensitivity. Sensitivity in listening includes awareness of your own needs and desires, your feelings toward the speaker, and your emotional involvement with both the individual and the subject matter. It also includes your ability to detect the needs and desires of others, to understand their feelings and emotions, and to demonstrate understanding and acceptance. Barriers to listening. Even when physical conditions are well under control, emotional factors enter into listening effectiveness. The first barrier to be overcome is preoccupation. Successful salespeople know that their first job in selling is to break the preoccupation of the prospect, to focus attention on the matter at hand. It's natural to be preoccupied with one's own needs, desires, and interests. It is when preoccupation with them blocks listening that a problem exists. As an effective listener, you do not wait for someone else to break your preoccupation, but instead you deliberately and consciously set aside for the moment any matters that would interfere with listening. In a real sense, your own needs and desires are best served when you focus full attention on listening. You often gain information, ideas, and insights that are as important to you as they are to the one who presents them. Another important physical barrier to effective listening is the rate of thinking of which the human mind is capable. Average conversation proceeds at approximately 125 words a minute, and at times speakers may even slow down to 100 words a minute, particularly if information is complex. But the human mind is capable of thinking at a rate of 400 to 600 words a minute. This discrepancy means that the listener's brain has quite a bit of leisure time available while listening. As a result, the mind of the listener takes frequent side trips that may substantially reduce the percentage of the message that is actually received. Suppose you're a salesperson and your sales manager calls you in to talk about the introduction of a new product. You begin by giving full attention to what he is saying, but your mind, capable of much faster movement than ordinary speech, looks for other material to fill the voids. You may think about an appointment you have to make a sales presentation at 11 and wonder if this discussion will cause you to be late, or if you will have time to make the telephone calls you need to make before you go to your appointment. Then your attention returns to what the sales manager is saying, only to dart away again as you remember some of the problems encountered with the last new major product introduction. You review some of the steps you took to overcome those problems and begin to think about how they would apply in this new situation. Suddenly, your mind snaps to attention again, and you realize that what the sales manager is now saying does not seem logical. Evidently, you have missed an important link in the reasoning. It is possible to turn your rate of thinking into an asset instead of a liability in the listening situation. Two excellent tools for managing your thinking in a listening situation are qualities that are important to success in any endeavor. 1. Organizing. Managers, supervisors, salespeople, students, teachers, parents, all those whose work involves more than one or two basic tasks are accustomed to organizing activities, ideas, and objects. You can apply your ability to organize to the listening activity. As you listen, try to see the pattern and progression of the speaker's logic. Organization may consist of a complete outline of a formal speech with notes about important points, or it may be a simple one-sentence summary of a shorter message. While you may have several full pages of notes from a 3-hour seminar session, you can summarize the sales manager's request in only a few words. You're saying then that you need to receive my weekly report before noon next Monday to give you time to prepare for a special meeting, and this is a special procedure. The usual 5 o'clock deadline will resume next week, is that right? Use your skills of organization to capture main ideas, record key words, and follow logical progression. 2. Analyzing. As you listen, analyze the ideas you hear. Compare them with information you already have. Decide which items are relevant to the question at hand. Look for logical cause and effect relationships. Decide how the information you hear affects your personal goals, the goals of the organization, or relationships concerned. When you use listening time to organize and analyze, you shut out distractions and minimize your preoccupation with other matters. You are less likely to miss important points made by the speaker. Because you are actively involved in the communication process, you cut down on the boredom experienced by an inactive mind and avoid the wandering pattern of thought that reduces listening effectiveness.
This is the end of Side A.
Learn to use silence. An obvious but often neglected technique of effective listening is just keeping silent. It is an ever-present temptation to use listening time to rehearse what you want to say instead of absorbing what another is saying. The result is a tendency to jump in with your own comments and ideas whenever the speaker pauses for breath, even though your ideas may not be relevant to the question at hand. Albert Einstein once told an interviewer that his formula for success was X plus Y plus Z equals A, with A being success. He explained that X is work, Y is play, and Z is keeping your mouth shut. Learning to remain silent is an important physical tool for better listening. Remaining silent does not mean that you're inactive. Creative listening is not a passive state. On the contrary, it calls for a high level of involvement emotionally, physically, and mentally. Listen for feelings. Use your own silence as an opportunity to listen not only for words and ideas, but for feelings. How another feels is often more important than the spoken word. In fact, the feelings you can observe in body language, facial expression, and tone of voice often contradict the actual verbal message. Suppose you have just received word that your department needs to get out a special order that will require major rearrangement of the production schedule for the next 2 weeks. You call in Ralph, the production supervisor, and explain the project. He reminds you of the tight schedule and expresses concern about the necessary juggling of other production items. You explain the priority need for this new item and sketch out some suggestions for rearranging the schedule. All during the conversation, Ralph appears tense and agitated. His hands and body become more and more restless. His voice rises in pitch and volume, and he becomes red in the face. Finally, at the end of the interview, he says, "All right, I'll set it up," strides across the room and slams the office door. What do you expect in the way of performance? Will the priority job be done on time, or is Ralph likely to sabotage it? Will the rearranged schedule be workable? How will the production line workers feel about the necessary changes? In contrast, suppose Ralph remains relaxed during the conversation, makes notes regarding your suggestions for changing the schedule, and closes the conversation by saying, "All right, I'll set it up," gathers up his notes and walks calmly out of your office. Do you expect the priority job to be done correctly and on time? How will the scheduled changes work out? What will be the attitudes of production line workers? If you listen only to words, you fail to understand the full import of the message. The importance of semantics. A problem often arises in listening from semantic difficulties, the failure to realize that words do not always mean the same thing to all people. Words are symbols of ideas. They represent mental images. If a particular word calls up a different image in your mind from that intended by the speaker, misunderstanding is sure to follow. In one of his books, Winston Churchill tells the story of an argument that arose in a meeting of the British and American Chiefs of Staff Committee during World War II. The British presented a memo on an important point and then proposed to table it, which to them meant put it on the table for immediate discussion. The Americans protested vigorously that the matter must not be tabled, which to them meant defer consideration indefinitely. The debate became heated before the participants suddenly realized that they all wanted the same thing. Parents and teenagers frequently experience difficulties because of semantic differences. When semantic differences are not discovered and resolved, family harmony quickly dissolves. You might be involved in a conversation like this with your 14-year-old daughter.
"Oh, Daddy, you'll never guess. You know Michael Thompson, the one I pointed out to you at the ball game the other night? I thought he didn't even know I'm alive. And guess what? Today he asked me if I'd like to go steady with him."
If Father hears the phrase "go steady" as the final step just before engagement and marriage, the conversation might continue like this.
"Well, I certainly hope you had sense enough to tell him what a stupid idea that is, going steady at your age. No way."
"What do you mean, stupid idea? Why, half the girls in the school will be green with envy when they find out that Michael and I are going steady."
And from here on, things get worse. While some of the difficulties between parents and teenagers involve a real difference of opinion about what is or is not appropriate, many disagreements, even heated arguments, could be avoided by employing the techniques of reflective feedback to detect and resolve semantic difficulties. Reflective feedback involves rephrasing the speaker's message in your own words and feeding back your understanding to the speaker to check for agreement. If the father in the scene we just heard had used reflective feedback, things might have been entirely different.
"Oh, Daddy, you'll never guess. You know Michael Thompson, the one I pointed out to you at the ball game the other night? I thought he didn't even know I'm alive. And guess what? Today he asked me if I'd like to go steady with him."
You sound really excited about the idea of going steady with Michael.
"I'll say, half the girls in the school will be green with envy when they find out that Michael and I are going steady."
Going steady? Are you really ready for that kind of permanent commitment?
"Permanent? What do you mean, permanent?"
Well, you did say going steady. Doesn't that imply something about the future?
"Sure it affects the future, but I don't know where you get this business about commitment. I didn't say I was getting married, just going steady.
Just what is going steady?
Well, I guess really what it is just agreeing to be, sort of best friends for right now. You remember, like I was with Christopher right after school started, and with Jimmy last month?
Oh, I see. Well, I hope this Michael fellow is smart enough to see what a lucky fellow he is to have you agree to go steady with him.
In this example, the father listened creatively. He tried out his own definition of the phrase going steady and found that it did not match that of his daughter. When definitions were settled, the father could join his daughter in excitement about her new relationship and could even find an opportunity to reinforce her sense of self-worth. This process of rephrasing what you hear and checking out semantics clarifies understanding and diffuses emotional reactions that often block communication. When you give reflective feedback, you not only check out your own understanding, you enable the speaker to evaluate his own message from another point of view and to get a feel for how he is being received. It becomes easier for everyone involved to remain calm and objective so that effective communication can take place. Sometimes people who know how to listen effectively and who are skilled in giving reflective feedback fail to do so when they perceive the responsibility for such listening to rest on the other person. In the example we have just listened to, it was the father who gave reflective feedback to the daughter. Parents too often assume that it is the child's responsibility to understand parental instructions. But when the father assumed the initiative for giving feedback and for listening reflectively, the daughter immediately responded in the same vein. Exercise your initiative. Listen reflectively and offer feedback whether you begin a conversation or whether someone else approaches you. Assuming that someone else will accept responsibility for the clarity of the conversation wastes time and energy. The more effective you become in reflective listening and giving feedback, the more skillful others around you will become in these same abilities. The importance of preparation. If you know ahead of time that you will be involved in a communication experience which could prove difficult, it may help to prepare ahead of time for the interview. It is not enough to prepare what you intend to say. It is also vital that you prepare to listen effectively. First, review all that you know about the subject matter of the interview. Read any available memos or reports regarding the subject and outline the actions that have been taken so far. Second, anticipate the feelings or emotions that may be experienced by each participant in the interview. Plan how you want to respond to such emotions. Visualize how you will look. Imagine how you will feel. Third, write down several questions you may ask or comments you can make that will help you clarify what the other person wants from the interview. Fourth, write down the benefits you will enjoy from listening creatively during the interview. Then, make a list of the tactics for creative listening that would be applicable to this interview. Plan to use them. Fifth, if the interview is an especially crucial one, enlist the aid of someone who is willing to help you practice ahead of time by role-playing the interview with you. Play the scene in several versions so that you will feel comfortable no matter what direction the interview takes. As you prepare, visualize the benefits of creative listening. You will enter even the most difficult interview with calm assurance that you can handle whatever happens. When the time for the interview arrives, follow these suggestions. 1. Choose a time and place relatively free of distractions. 2. Make sure that the other person is aware of your sincere interest in listening to his ideas and opinions and in helping to solve any problem that might arise. 3. Control the temptation to interrupt. Hear the other person out. 4. When someone seems hesitant, ask non-judgmental questions that will help you find out how he feels. Listen for remembering. No matter how carefully you listen, it is impossible to retain everything you hear. Various research studies have found that only a small part of what we hear is retained in the memory. Dr. Ralph G. Nichols of the University of Minnesota discovered in his research that only 25% of what is heard registers at the moment. William J. Tobin found that if information is given to 100 people, 25 will forget it in 24 hours. By the time 16 days have passed, 98 of the 100 will have forgotten it. Another study shows that 62% of all ideas are accepted only after they have been presented for the 6th time. Remembering and accepting what you hear are certainly not automatic. One of the best memory aids is note-taking. Note-taking is applicable to a variety of situations. In a seminar or lecture, in a business conference, or even in a conversation with a single individual. Find the happy medium between trying to record everything you hear and recording nothing. The mere physical action of writing down a few key words of information or an idea reinforces your memory and understanding. In most instances, making notes of what someone else says to you is perceived as a compliment. When you make notes, people know you consider their message important. They're confident that you will follow up with suitable action. Visualize the communication process as a funnel through which the speaker pours information into the listener's mind. Do you see the picture? You probably visualize the funnel with the large end up. Now, visualize someone sending you a message which fills the funnel. If you receive 100% of what is being said, all of that information must be condensed, shaken together, and squeezed down to enter your awareness through the small end of the funnel, which represents your mental attitude, your prior conditioning, and all of the emotional reactions you experience to the speaker's words. The information filters through all of your previous experience and your feelings. Even though 100% of the communication reached your ears, you retain perhaps 10% of the message. With creative listening, it is possible to visualize an entirely different picture. In this case, invert the funnel and let the small end extend upward. Now, 100% of the message enters the small end of the funnel and is filtered in the same manner as before through your experience and feelings. But because you employ creative listening while receiving the message, there is room for expansion. Your activity in thinking, comparing, analyzing, and clarifying ideas enhances the message. Now, what emerges from the funnel fills the large end. You multiply the effectiveness of what you have heard by 10 instead of dividing it by 10. As a result, you have 1,000% of the message available for your use instead of only 10%. The payoff from creative listening is 100 to 1. Your plan of action. Begin now to develop a plan of action for becoming a creative listener. Make a list of 10 people to whom you could listen with profit. Include your boss, your key subordinates, close friends or associates, and members of your family. Go back over your list and evaluate yourself as a listener in the most recent contacts with each of these people. You might rate yourself as an excellent listener, as good, fair, or poor. Next, make a list of the benefits you could enjoy from improved ability to listen in your relationship with each of these people. Could you learn more about others? About yourself? Could you avoid misunderstandings or emotional conflicts? How would your work be easier? How would your life be happier? Now that you can see the specific benefits you would enjoy from becoming a more creative listener, begin to develop some specific strategies for improving your listening abilities with each of these people. Under each name, write down what you plan to do the next time you have an opportunity to listen to each of these people. Periodically, check on your plan to evaluate your growth in listening ability. Creative listening makes life richer and fuller, opens the door to opportunities, and makes new relationships possible. Listen to a child and experience a sense of wonder in the discovery of a butterfly or an earthworm. Listen to an experienced worker for practical reactions to your creative ideas. Listen to older people and hear the wisdom of long experience. Listen to youth and hear enthusiasm and idealism. Listen to colleagues and expand your knowledge. Listen to people with problems and hear their appeal for acceptance. Listen to your family and hear the offer of love and a request for its return. Listen. You can only grow. Here is a message of interest from the producers of Success Motivation cassette tapes. Just one exposure to new materials, whether you listen or read, is unlikely to bring you many benefits. But through the power of spaced repetition, you can listen to this tape many times and increase your understanding and retention with each repetition. Every time you listen, you will increase what you remember. The more you remember, the more you will actually use. We recommend that you listen to this cassette tape at least once a day for a week, and then as often as you can to get the most benefit from the ideas and information it contains. You will want to add other Success Motivation cassette tapes to your Success Listening library. Choose from a variety of titles on topics such as personal motivation, skills for effective selling, successful management techniques, health and physical fitness, personal development, transactional analysis, and family living. This cassette tape is a part of a series of the Success Motivation cassette tapes produced by SMI International Incorporated and distributed by Success Motivation Cassettes, a division of SMI. The information on this cassette is protected by international copyright. All rights are strictly reserved. Duplication or reproduction in whole or in part is prohibited without the written consent of SMI International Incorporated. Success Motivation cassette tapes are available at retail stores and from Success Motivation cassette tape distributors. To find the name of your nearest distributor, write to Success Motivation Cassettes, Post Office Box 7614, Waco, Texas. Zip code 76714, 7614.